welcome to My Tiny Bottles, the project where I'm exploring my grandmother's legacy of miniature liquor bottles, one tiny bottle at a time. I'm your host, Tammy Coxon. Bottle number 19 is a tiny bottle of Hennessy Cognac. Hennessy is considered to be part of the big four cognac houses that make most of the world's cognac. Martell is the oldest, founded in 1715. I talked about that in bottle number 7. Hennessy didn't get its start until 1765, but what it lacks in age, it makes up for in sales, because today it's the top-selling cognac brand in the world. And a lot of those sales are to African Americans. The relationship of the Black community to brandy in general and Hennessy in particular has a long history. There are a lot of great essays by Black writers that I read while researching this bottle, and I put some links in the show notes so you can check out their own words. But here are a few highlights. Some of the first stories we have about African Americans appreciating brandy and cognac come from the World Wars, when Black soldiers stationed in France were welcomed with open arms and feted with brandy by the French people they were liberating. Upon their return to the US, this appreciation of brandy stuck. Pre-Civil Rights America was deeply segregated, and American whiskey was made in the South and often honored Confederate leaders and used racist ideology in branding and marketing. Cognac didn't have any of that baggage. Cognac producers recognized this allegiance. In the 1950s, Hennessy was the first spirit brand to run ads in Ebony and Jet magazines, and that influenced an entire generation of drinkers, meaning that their kids and grandkids would grow up seeing Hennessy as the thing everyone in the family drank. And when those kids started recording hip-hop in the 90s, Hennessy and other brands of cognac were right there in those songs and that culture. There are some other deeper historical connections as well. The label of My Tiny Bottle declares that it was imported by Schieffelin & Co. of New York. This is a really fascinating company. They've got roots right back to the founding of the United States. And part of that long history is supporting civil rights for Black Americans. In 1896, company president William J. Schieffelin joined the board of the Tuskegee Institute and eventually became board chairman. In the early 1900s, he was particularly concerned with the working conditions of the factories that employed Black people in New York. So he hired George Edmund Haynes, who was the first Black man to receive a PhD from Columbia School of Economics, to lead a new nonprofit organization dedicated to improving conditions. In 1910, this organization would merge with two others in what today is known as the National Urban League. Just prior to that, in 1909, Schieffelin & Co. was the first corporate sponsor of the NAACP. Then, in the 1960s, Schieffelin & Co. would hire 1948 Black Olympian Herb Douglas, who in 1977 would become the company's vice president of urban market development. That made him only the third Black person to be a VP of a major U.S. company. Herb played a significant role in continuing to cement the alliance of Hennessy with Black Americans. Now, this is all about Schieffelin, so what does that have to do with Hennessy? The two get intertwined thanks to the usual cascade of corporate mergers. In 1971, Hennessy merged with Moet & Chandon, and then in 1980, the new company, Moet Hennessy, acquired Schieffelin. They eventually merged with Louis Vuitton, creating the ultimate luxury brand, LVMH. But beyond who actually owned who at any given time, Schieffelin has been the sole U.S. importer of Hennessy since 1794. So when we talk about the history of Hennessy in the U.S., they're really the entity that matters, way more than the producers of the actual cognac back in France. My tiny bottle of Hennessy is probably from just before Herb Douglas became VP of Schieffelin. There are a few clues to the date. The tax strip is the big one because, like with that bottle of B&B I talked about recently, it's got less than half a pint printed on the end of the strip, so that means before 1977. It looks really old compared to the modern bottlings, so I cannot wait to sit down with a special guest and taste the old and new side by side. Be sure to subscribe so you won't miss that video when it comes around. And head to mytinybottles.com for more about this bottle and all the bottles. You can also follow My Tiny Bottles on Instagram and Facebook, where I'll sometimes post tidbits of my research in progress. Cheers!